You meet a woman, and within a surprisingly short amount of time, she's telling you things she doesn't usually share: personal stuff, family dynamics, past relationships, insecurities. The kind of information that normally takes a while to come out. And your first thought might be, that's interesting, but why me? Or you downplay it and assume she's just an open person. Sometimes that's true, but more often than men realize, when women open up to you quickly, it's not about them being overly talkative. It's about how you make them feel. And that feeling usually has very little to do with what you're saying, and almost everything to do with who you are being in the moment. Let's slow this down and unpack it, because this is one of the clearest signals of emotional attraction and long-term potential that gets overlooked. First, here's the reframe that matters. When someone opens up early, they're not oversharing. They're testing safety. Not consciously, subconsciously. They're checking whether their vulnerability will be held, dismissed, judged, rushed, or turned into something else. If women open up to you quickly, it means your presence doesn't feel invasive. It doesn't feel transactional. It doesn't feel like they have to manage your reaction. They feel like they can speak, and you'll stay. One of the biggest reasons this happens is that you don't rush emotional intimacy. Ironically, that's what allows it to show up faster. You're not probing. You're not fishing for depth. You're not steering the conversation towards something real to prove a point. You let conversation unfold naturally. You ask questions that invite reflection, not confession. And when silence shows up, you don't panic and fill it. That space is where trust grows. Most people aren't used to being listened to without being interrupted, redirected, or subtly evaluated. When someone realizes they can talk and not be managed, something softens. And once that softening happens, words start to come out. Another reason women open up to you quickly is that you don't react dramatically to what they say. You don't flinch when they mention something heavy. You don't immediately jump into fixing mode. You don't minimize or reframe to keep things light. You let the moment exist. That tells her something powerful. I don't need you to be a certain way for me to stay present. For someone who's used to being emotionally calibrated to others, adjusting, editing, protecting, that kind of acceptance feels rare. And here's the part men often miss. When women open up quickly, they're not necessarily trying to deepen the relationship right away. They're checking whether deeper connection is even possible here. It's an experiment, not a declaration. Your response matters more than the sharing itself. If you treat vulnerability like a gift, not a burden, not an opportunity, not a signal you need to escalate, trust compounds. There's also something about how you talk about yourself that creates this dynamic. You're honest, but you're not dumping. You share, but you don't overshare. You speak from experience without turning the conversation into a monologue. That balance communicates emotional literacy. It says, I know myself, and I don't need you to carry me. That alone makes it easier for someone else to open up because they don't feel like they're stepping into a caretaker role. Another key reason women open up to you quickly is that you don't judge yourself harshly in front of them. You don't self-criticize excessively. You don't put yourself down to seem humble or relatable. Self-acceptance is contagious. When someone senses that you're comfortable with who you are, flaws included, they feel safer revealing their own. Not because you're perfect, but because you're not pretending. Let's talk about boundaries for a moment, because they play a surprising role here. If women open up to you quickly, it's often because you respect boundaries without making a thing out of it. If someone hesitates, changes topics, or slows down, you follow the cue. You don't pry, you don't push, you don't ask why in a way that feels demanding. That restraint builds trust faster than curiosity ever could. People open up when they feel in control of the pacing. Another subtle but powerful factor is how you handle emotions that aren't positive. Sadness, confusion, anger, fear. If you don't get uncomfortable when emotions aren't neat, you register as emotionally safe. You don't need to reframe everything as a lesson. You don't invalidate feelings by offering perspective too quickly. You sit with it. And sitting with emotion is something many people rarely experience, especially with men. Now, here's something important to clarify, because this is where misunderstandings can happen. When women open up to you quickly, it doesn't automatically mean romantic interest. Sometimes it does, sometimes it's the beginning of deeper attraction, but sometimes it's something else. Sometimes it means you feel safe in a way that's almost therapeutic, and that's not a bad thing. But it does require awareness. If you confuse emotional openness with guaranteed romantic intent, you might accidentally apply pressure that shuts the whole thing down. Safety evaporates the moment someone feels like their vulnerability created an obligation. The men women open up to most easily are the ones who don't make vulnerability mean anything it doesn't. They don't rush to define it. They don't attach expectations. They don't assume access. They let it be what it is. Ironically, that restraint is often what allows attraction to grow instead of collapse. Another reason women open up quickly is that you don't make conversations competitive. You're not trying to top their story. You're not redirecting to your own experience unless it genuinely adds resonance. You don't treat conversation like a stage. You treat it like a shared space. That creates emotional intimacy without force. There's also your emotional pacing. You don't escalate closeness faster than the situation calls for. You don't suddenly become intensely attentive or emotionally invested just because someone shared something personal. You remain steady. That steadiness tells her she hasn't opened a door she can't close. Now, let's address something men sometimes worry about. If women open up to you quickly, does that mean you're being seen as just a friend? Not necessarily. Safety is the foundation of romantic attraction, not the opposite of it. The difference lies in what happens next. If you stay grounded, if you continue to show interest without neediness, if you allow space for attraction to develop alongside emotional trust, you move into a very powerful position. The men who struggle are the ones who either freeze, afraid to disrupt the safety, or push too hard, trying to convert vulnerability into romance. Both extremes miss the point. The real skill is holding both warmth and groundedness at the same time. Another sign this dynamic is happening is that women often check back in with you. They reference previous conversations. They update you. They ask for your perspective. That's not accidental. It means your presence has weight. It means your responses landed. And here's the deeper reason behind all of this. Women open up quickly to men who feel emotionally regulated, men who aren't chasing validation, men who aren't overwhelmed by closeness or scared of it. You don't need them to be a certain way to feel okay, and that freedom allows honesty. So if this happens to you, don't dismiss it. Don't romanticize it either. Just notice it. Notice how people soften around you. Notice how conversations deepen without effort. Notice how trust shows up early. Those are signals. And if you want this to continue, whether platonically or romantically, the key is simple but not easy. Stay present, stay grounded, stay curious without attachment. Because when women open up to you quickly, it's usually because something about you feels steady enough to lean on, even briefly. And that kind of presence is rare. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's powerful. And if you cultivate it intentionally, it can change the entire way people experience you and the kind of relationships that become possible in your life.